sounds like the German Unternehmer. I wasn't sure, is it Abnehmer or Abnehmer or something, but you just call it Unternehmer,
Yeah.
as if it was a German name.
Yeah, yeah. So we don't know if it was shortened at Ellis Island, because when I discovered that Unternehmer was entrepreneur, I realized I've been unemployable my whole life. I just had to go figure it out myself. Maybe I truly am an entrepreneur.
You are proposing something, you are offering something, a platform for people who would like to engage themselves in social entrepreneurship. So maybe you explain a little bit what your idea is, what your offer is, and what we could do with it.
Okay, so I've been an entrepreneur my whole life, and it was 5 years ago in California that we enrolled my first daughter in a Rudolf Steiner school in California. And so
Rudolf Steiner.
Yeah, so the Rudolf Steiner education was this very attractive pedagogy for the education with social consciousness and environmental consciousness. And so it was very appealing in what is a real rat race for your children in the super competitive school system and the failed public system. So the Steiner education was this fantastic, refreshing, grounded, spiritual education for our daughters. So we enrolled in the school and moved from Northern California to Southern California, where my wife's and my family all were, so it was natural for us to move down there. And as soon as we started school, I was offered to become a member of the real estate committee at the school, because they discovered I was a lawyer and a real estate developer. So at the first meeting a week later, they announced that the lease is expiring at the end of the year, and they're all just a whole host of business problems with the school, and it's essentially going out of business. And I'm like, I just moved my whole family down here to come to this school, and here it's on the verge of going out of business. So then I became very involved and discovered here was this school with this great pedagogy and great spirituality to it, but nobody in this whole school knew how to run any of the business aspects of it, and it was really fundamentally failing for the failure of applying business discipline to this enterprise. They basically just got donations from rich parents of the school year after year. So that's when I got involved, and I took it upon myself to go find a new site for the school and figure out that there was a real demand for the Steiner education. There was a real shortage of good schools in Southern California, and if I could go find a school, I could charge the tuition of private school tuition for about half the students and provide almost free education for the other half to maintain the diversity of the school, and see if this could make financial sense. So essentially I did a whole business plan and figured out how we can underwrite as a for-profit entity how to run a Rudolf Steiner school. So I presented the concept to the school board, and they basically said, no, absolutely not. This is not a business venture. This is, abhorrent. And so then we went on that the school was about to go out of business and they had no choice. And then I discovered a site in Southern California that was owned by the Self-Realization Fellowship, which is Yogananda Paramahansa that introduced yoga to the Western world in 1918, similarly and ironically about the time Rudolf Steiner was developing the Waldorf educations in our Western world. So I met the people at Rudolf Steiner, or I'm sorry, the people at the Self-Realization Fellowship and met me, and they agreed to donate this building on an acre and a half for us to develop our school on. So it was just a miracle that happened that we were able to do this, but of course we needed to raise about $2 million to build the school and do all this. And so once again the school said, even though you discovered this great site and building, we're not going to run this like a business. And so it was this real difficulty, and eventually they had to concede we needed to run it like a business. And so about a year and a half later, after a long saga, they allowed me to essentially be this very unique business affairs manager separate from the pedagogy, because they learned to trust me and let me develop the school based on a complete for-profit business model after researching all the other schools and everything. and we ended up developing this school. And so now we have this, beautiful 17,000 square foot school in Southern California. It's one of the nicest Waldorf schools there is. So the as a real estate developer, I've been working on this project for about 3 years, and everybody in my industry is like, geez, you must be working on this huge project somewhere. What is it? And I was like, it's the school. I'm building this school. So it took all my time, but in the end, I won this national award for developing this school. And the irony was, it was because I took business principles and applied them to this institution that is otherwise an almost anti-business institution. And so I thought, geez, I'm this pioneer, I'm this genius guy that figured out how to take business disciplines and apply them to a social, school, or whatever it is. And so then after that, it was clearly the most fulfilling thing I've ever done to contribute back to my world, is to develop this school where 250 children are being educated with this pedagogy. So about a year after that, another person that had been very active with me in this development, we thought, geez, that was really the most rewarding thing we've ever done. How else can we apply our business discipline to social purpose enterprises?
Let me put a question. I understand that these Rudolf Steiner people were afraid that the moment they open up to something like a business-minded person like you, that their own goals and culture will be gone.
Right.
Yeah. You were not afraid of that. You think you can have both. You can have what you call business discipline and running a pedagogy that is something on its own, and certainly not surplus maximizing entity.
Yeah. And so the way we did it, we essentially separated the two for the most part. Because generally in the Waldorf schools in America, the faculty runs everything. They make all decisions. So we had to convince the faculty to simply let me make all business decisions, and they take care of educating the students. And so, that was completely absurd to them at the beginning, but once they realized there was no alternative, there would be nothing, they allowed it to happen, and so then it developed. Now the the reason they allowed me to do that is they had come to understand that I have this belief in a free market enterprise, that there's more to business than shareholder value. And so there's a real paradigm shift going on in the world today, that corporations shouldn't just be after shareholder value. It's obvious there are all these other costs caused by the operations of business that aren't reflected in shareholder value. So it was probably because they understood that I understood it's not just about the profits, it's not just about running the business efficiently and cutting costs. It was a complete orchestration of the goals and motivations of a Rudolf Steiner education, but understanding the business necessity of applying business discipline, just like disciplining a child. It's not always the fun thing to do, but it's one of those necessities.
You use a term, and I have found that very often in your papers, business discipline. You don't talk about management. Everybody else would talk about management. You avoid that.